Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack the absolutely fascinating origin story of how Figma, a once tiny startup, completely revolutionized the design industry and directly challenged Adobe's deeply entrenched monopoly. Honestly, it's a total masterclass in seeing a fundamental bottleneck in how human beings work, and then having the sheer audacity to build a seemingly impossible solution.
So to really get how they pull this off, we kind of have to start with this one incredibly dangerous question. What if design happened entirely in a web browser? Back in 2012, skeptics literally laughed this off as a technical impossibility. People thought, browsers were for scrolling text, not rendering heavy graphics. But as we're about to explore, this single question was the spark that completely changed how millions of people create things together.
All right, here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll start with the dark ages of design, move on to a browser-first vision, look at building real-time collaboration, cover challenging the market leader, and wrap up with lessons from the journey.
Okay, let's dive into part 1, the dark ages of design, the problem with traditional software.
Picture this. For decades, the reality of professional design was just incredibly high friction. Designers were totally siloed on these heavy local machines, working completely disconnected from one another. But Figma, well, they envisioned this agile, instant, and connected future where teams could work side by side virtually, without any of those traditional clunky barriers.
In those dark ages of digital design, professional teams really suffered through some terrible bottlenecks. You had to shell out for crazy expensive software licenses, sit through massive installations, and navigate just constant version control nightmares. We've all been there, right? Adding final_v2 to an endless email chain of files, it was a fundamentally broken system for a collaborative world. It slowed down product development and kept designers completely separated from developers and product managers.
Which brings us to part 2, a browser-first vision, starring founders Dylan Field and Evan Wallace.
These guys completely committed their lives to this single vision. And this wasn't just some fleeting, overnight idea that they threw together in a weekend. Not at all. They spent their early years quietly and deliberately building out the highly complex, untrodden technology, like leveraging early WebGL, required to actually make heavy graphic rendering happen seamlessly inside a standard web browser.
And getting there wasn't easy, because their browser-first approach was actually seen as professional suicide by industry veterans at the time. Basically, the consensus was that standard web browsers simply couldn't handle the heavy, resource-intensive demands of rendering professional design files. Everyone thought a massive local installation was absolutely mandatory for performance. But Figma completely disagreed. They believed the browser was going to be the ultimate operating system of the future.
So how did they pull it off? Let's get into part 3, building real-time collaboration, or the Figma advantage.
Figma brilliantly paired a browser-first architecture with native cloud collaboration. And by wrapping all of this in a super intuitive interface and lightning-fast performance, they unlocked something magical: true real-time editing. For the first time ever, teams across the globe could inhabit the exact same project simultaneously. You could actually see cursors flying across the screen and watch ideas appear instantly. It felt way less like a software tool and more like a shared virtual room.
And this is absolutely crucial. It unlocked a massive realization. Figma didn't just build a marginally better design tool with a few shiny new features. They fundamentally solved a human collaboration problem. They shifted the entire industry's focus from individual file creation to synchronized, dynamic teamwork. Design was no longer a solo activity. It was suddenly this multiplayer game where everyone from copywriters to CEOs could jump in and contribute.
All right, part 4, challenging the market leader, the disruption.
As you can guess, this collaborative superpower triggered a massive shift over time. In their first few years, they were strictly heads down building the browser tech. But as agile startups began adopting the platform, momentum just snowballed. Soon, massive corporate product teams followed suit, realizing they absolutely couldn't compete if their design teams were still working the old way. This all culminated in a complete market shakeup by years 10 and 11.
Because they relentlessly prioritized collaborative innovation over everything else, their popularity exploded far beyond just graphic designers. They achieved massive worldwide enterprise adoption, embedded themselves right into corporate design systems, and literally became the default tool in design education. Fueled by a booming community plugin ecosystem that let users build their own tools within Figma, they became the undeniable industry standard.
Naturally, the reigning Goliath couldn't ignore this. Adobe recognized Figma as a massive, existential threat to their decades-long dominance, and they responded with a staggering $20 billion acquisition attempt. Wow. Now, while that monumental deal was ultimately blocked by intense regulatory scrutiny, the sheer size of the attempt proved one undeniable thing. Figma's platform had effectively dethroned the king.
Let's wrap this up with Part 5, Lessons from the Journey, Takeaways for Entrepreneurs.
Figma's origin gives us 4 brilliant takeaways. First, challenge old assumptions about how your industry must do things. Just because it's always been done locally doesn't mean it should be. Second, look at how people actually work together and solve for collaboration, not just better standalone tools. Third, innovate exactly where others see technical limits. And finally, never forget that a seamless, frictionless user experience is a weapon powerful enough to disrupt even the biggest monopolies.
Remember, the next great company wins not by simply being bigger, but by thinking completely differently. So I want to leave you with this final thought today. Look for the hidden limitations in your own industry and imagine what a browser-first revolution might look like for you. Thanks so much for diving into this explainer with me.